I had always thought of myself as a patient man. Quiet. Reserved. Waiting for my turn in life. But that afternoon, everything changed. The house was eerily quiet when I stepped inside. The air felt thick, as if the walls themselves knew something was wrong. I was expecting to find Olivia sitting at the kitchen counter, reading emails on her tablet, as she usually did. Instead, there was silence. I called her name, the words echoing in the hallway. No response. I dropped my briefcase by the door, my mind racing as I walked deeper into the house. My thoughts were still on the meeting I'd just left. The numbers didn't add up. The deal we were working on was too good to be true. Jonathan Steele, Olivia's boss, had been acting strange lately. He wasn't the man he used to be, something had shifted, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being left in the dark. The house was still. No sign of Olivia. I checked the kitchen, then the living room, my footsteps heavy on the hardwood floors. Nothing. Then, the sound of running water came from upstairs. My heart skipped a beat. Why was the bathroom running? The question felt stupid. Of course, it was the shower. Olivia must have been in there, the hot water running, distracting me from reality. I climbed the stairs, each step creaking under my weight. My breath felt shallow. Something wasn't right. As I approached the bathroom, I heard voices. Soft whispers. Then laughter. Low, like a secret shared between two people who thought no one was listening. I stopped, the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. I knew that voice. It was Olivia. But the other voice, sharp, unfamiliar, but also strangely confident, belonged to Jonathan Steele. Her boss. The man who had been pushing her to work late. The man who had taken an interest in her that I never quite understood. I swallowed hard. I felt like I was being suffocated by the truth that was slowly crawling into my bones. My body moved on its own, before I could stop it, before I could think. I reached for the door handle. My fingers were cold. Trembling. What I saw inside shattered everything. Olivia and Jonathan were in the bathtub. Naked. Intertwined. The water was running over their bodies, their intimacy exposed in the most brutal way possible. My breath hitched, and for a moment, I stood frozen. Time seemed to slow down. How long had this been going on? I felt like I was watching a movie, one I never wanted to be part of. But I wasn't in the movie. This was real life. My life. My eyes locked on them for a second longer before I did something that surprised even me. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I didn't rush in and drag them apart. I locked the door. I turned the key slowly, hearing the metallic click echo in the silence. The sound was final. Final for them. I didn't know what I would do next. I didn't even know if I was in control anymore. But I had to make a decision, and I needed time to think. Time to plan. I stood there for a moment, my mind racing. Olivia had betrayed me. But why? What was Jonathan's game? And why was I just finding out now? I pulled my phone from my pocket. David, my older brother. The one person who had always been my support in the family. But now, I wasn't so sure. I had always felt like the weak link, the one left out of the important decisions, the one too far behind to notice when things were going wrong. But now, maybe I was the only one who could fix this. I sent him a message, my fingers trembling as I typed the words. I need you to come over. There's something you need to see. The text was a simple request. But beneath it, I knew I was about to step into a world I wasn't ready for. The lies, the secrets, and everything I thought I knew would be ripped apart. But there was no turning back now. The truth was coming for all of us. And I would be ready when it did. I stared at the locked bathroom door, my hand still trembling on the key. I didn't know what to do next. My mind raced, but no thought seemed to make sense. The betrayal that had shattered my world was so clear now. Olivia and Jonathan. Together. The truth hit harder than any blow I could have prepared for. I could hear their voices from the other side. Olivia was pleading. Begging. I hated that I could hear her. Part of me wanted to open that door, drag them both out and scream at them, force them to see what they'd done. But I couldn't. Not yet. I needed a plan. I stood there for a moment longer, staring at the door, as if willing it to open. I had always been the quiet one, the one who let things slide, the one who didn't cause a scene. It was how I lived my life. But today, everything changed. Today, I was done being the passive one. The last few months, I'd sensed something was off. Olivia had been distant, distracted. The late nights at work, the weird phone calls. The times I'd walked into the room just in time to see her quickly hang up the phone, her face flushed. I was too blind to see it for what it was. The thought made my blood boil. But there was more. Something I hadn't expected. Something that would change everything. I pulled my phone from my pocket, my fingers shaking. I didn't want to call David. I didn't want to drag him into this. But if I was going to survive this, I needed all the help I could get. I typed out the message quickly, barely pausing to think. I need you to come over. There's something you need to see. I hit send and stared at the screen, waiting for the 3 dots to appear, signaling his response. Nothing. I didn't know whether to be relieved or terrified. David had always been the family's golden boy, the one who had it all together. I could never measure up to him. I wasn't sure if I should be asking for his help or if this was something I had to handle alone. I paced the hallway, my footsteps heavy and rhythmic against the wood floor. The house felt empty. Everything around me felt suffocating. The silence after Olivia's pleading was louder than any noise could be. I kept hearing her voice in my head, her words slipping through my thoughts like whispers from a ghost. Please, Ethan, I love you. I never meant to hurt you. But love wasn't enough. Love didn't make her betray me. Love didn't make her choose him. I knew I couldn't trust her anymore. I couldn't trust anything she said. As the minutes passed, I realized I couldn't just sit around waiting for answers. I needed them now. I needed to know what had happened, what I had missed. What I had ignored for so long. I went to my office. The room felt colder than usual, the sterile light of the desk lamp flickering as I turned on my computer. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment, hesitant. Then I dove in. I searched for Jonathan Steele. His name came up in countless company reports and articles. The man had it all, a powerful career, wealth, influence. He was the kind of person people admired from afar, the kind of man I had never quite trusted. Something about him had always rubbed me the wrong way, even when Olivia spoke about him with a tone of admiration that felt too personal. But this was more than I could have imagined. I clicked on a file buried deep within the company's financial records. It was an email exchange between Jonathan and an unknown recipient, someone involved in some shady dealings. The numbers were wrong. The investments were off. And the more I dug, the more I saw that this wasn't just about an affair. Jonathan had been planning something much bigger. A merger. A corporate takeover. A plot to steal the company's assets. And Olivia was right in the middle of it. She wasn't just his lover. She was his accomplice. I slammed the laptop shut, my heart racing. This wasn't just about Olivia. This wasn't just a betrayal of our relationship. This was a conspiracy, one that reached far beyond the two of them. I had to act fast. Before they could cover it up, before they could erase everything. I grabbed my phone again, dialing David's number. It rang, and I could hear my own breath in the silence. Pick up. Please, pick up. On the third ring, he finally answered. Ethan? What's going on? You sounded urgent in your message. His voice was low, cautious. Too cautious. David, it's Olivia. And Jonathan. I paused, swallowing hard. It's worse than I thought. They're in on something bigger. I need your help. I need you to come over. There was a beat of silence, too long for comfort. Ethan, what the hell are you talking about? He asked, his voice dropping into something more serious. I'll explain when you get here. Just hurry. The call ended, and I tossed the phone onto the couch. I walked back toward the bathroom door, my fingers brushing the cold metal handle. I wasn't going to just stand here. I had to get the truth, even if it destroyed everything. Even if it meant tearing down the people I loved. But what if I was wrong? What if I was seeing things that weren't there? What if this whole thing was just my mind spinning out of control? I didn't have time to think about that. I couldn't afford to be wrong. If I hesitated now, everything would fall apart. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway brought me back to the present. David was here. And the moment he walked through that door, everything would change. But I wasn't ready for what he would say next. You don't understand, Ethan. You never will. David arrived minutes later, his car screeching to a halt in the driveway. I didn't move from the hallway, my body rigid as I watched him approach. He knocked twice, sharp, fast, like he was running out of time. I opened the door slowly, just enough to let him in. His eyes scanned the room, taking in the tense silence that clung to the air like smoke. Ethan, David said, his voice strained. What the hell is going on? You've got me worried. I didn't reply at first. I was still processing everything, Olivia, Jonathan, the conspiracy I'd barely started to unravel. How deep did this go? What if I was wrong? What if I was seeing things that weren't there? But David wasn't going to wait. He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. Talk to me, man. I don't like this. I looked at him, my throat tight. His words felt like a trigger. Something about his presence, the way he always thought he knew best, pushed me over the edge. Sit down, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. David hesitated but obeyed, sinking into the armchair by the window. What's this about Olivia? And Jonathan? I moved to the desk and picked up the pile of documents. My fingers brushed over them, but I didn't look at them. I couldn't focus. My head was spinning. She's been lying to me, David, I said, my voice low. It's not just an affair. It's worse. I found something, proof. Jonathan isn't just her boss, he's been using her for his own agenda. There's a whole plan, a financial conspiracy. They're stealing from the company. And from me. David's eyes narrowed, his expression unreadable. You're sure about this? I nodded, holding back the anger that threatened to overwhelm me. I found the emails, the accounts, hidden transactions. This isn't some fling. It's a power grab. And Olivia's right in the middle of it. David stood up suddenly, his face twisted in disbelief. No. You don't know what you're talking about. I do, I snapped, slamming the papers down onto the desk. I've seen it, David. Don't act like you didn't know. David froze. His lips parted, but no words came out. I saw the fear in his eyes, the same fear I felt deep in my gut. I wasn't the only one who'd been kept in the dark. I don't know what you're talking about, David said, his voice a little too high-pitched. The shift was subtle, but it was there. His hands shook as he ran them through his hair. I stepped closer to him. You know damn well what I'm talking about. You've been working with him, with Jonathan. All this time, you've been involved in his plans, haven't you? You knew about the accounts, the transfers, the money disappearing from the company. Hell, you probably knew about Olivia too, didn't you? You've been a part of this, all along. David took a step back, his face going pale. He looked like a man cornered, like the walls were closing in around him. Ethan, you've got it all wrong. I don't think so, I cut him off. The company's about to go under. You were part of this. And now, you're trying to cover your tracks. Just like Jonathan. His face twitched, then he did something I didn't expect. He grabbed his jacket and turned toward the door. "What are you doing?" I demanded. David paused with his hand on the doorknob. His voice was low, almost calm. "You don't know what you're asking, Ethan. You're in way over your head." My stomach dropped. "You're in way over your head." Those words echoed in my mind. I had already suspected something darker than just an affair. But hearing David say it, in that voice, made my pulse race. "Get out," I said, barely able to contain the fury in my chest. David hesitated for a moment, then nodded, his eyes dark with something I couldn't quite place. He left without another word, the door slamming behind him. I stood there, my breath coming in shallow bursts, trying to process the chaos that had just exploded in my face. David wasn't just involved, he was covering up something much larger, something dangerous. I could hear Olivia again, her voice coming from upstairs, muffled by the thick walls. She was still pleading, still begging me to open the door. But I didn't care anymore. Not about her. Not about the lies. I was beyond that. But the truth was more complicated than I realized. If I exposed Jonathan and Olivia now, I risked more than just losing my fiancé. I could lose everything, my career, my reputation, even my family. If David was truly involved, exposing them would tear apart the very foundation I had relied on my whole life. I didn't have time to think about it anymore. I had to act fast, before everything was destroyed. I pulled out my phone again and dialed the number I had been dreading. "Hello, Ethan," the voice on the other end was cold, almost too calm. It was Jonathan Steele. "I've been waiting for your call," he said, and I could hear the smirk in his voice. "I knew you'd find out eventually." His words were a knife twisting in my gut. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, playing the game as best I could. "Oh, you do," Jonathan replied. "I've been watching you, Ethan. You have no idea how deep this goes. No idea what's really at stake here." My blood ran cold. "What do you want?" "I want you to understand something," Jonathan said. "You've been a pawn in this from the start. Just like Olivia. Just like David. And now, I'm giving you a choice. A choice." I knew what that choice would be. But the question was, what was I willing to sacrifice? "Make your move, Ethan. But remember, some games you can't win." I didn't answer. I couldn't. I just hung up. But his words stuck with me. I wasn't playing a game anymore. I was in a war. And I didn't know if I was strong enough to win. The door slammed shut behind David, and the sound echoed through the house. I stood there, fists clenched at my sides, staring at the empty space he left behind. My mind was a whirlpool of doubt and rage. David knew. He was involved. But why? How deep did this run? Was everyone in my life just playing a role, manipulating me from the start? I couldn't breathe. I had to move. I had to confront this. I glanced back at the bathroom door. The voices inside had stopped, but I knew they were still there. The silence was too thick. My pulse hammered in my ears as I crossed the room to the door. I was shaking now, the weight of what I had uncovered suffocating me. For months, I had been blind to the truth. Olivia. Jonathan. They weren't just betraying me, they were part of something much bigger. A corporate takeover. Money siphoned. Power stolen. A betrayal that ran so deep it had infected every part of my life. There was no going back. I unlocked the door. The click felt like a gunshot in the quiet house. I opened it slowly, my eyes meeting theirs. Olivia and Jonathan were both sitting on the edge of the bathtub, the room thick with the remnants of their betrayal. Olivia's face was pale, her eyes wide with panic, but she didn't say a word. Jonathan, on the other hand, was the first to speak. "Ethan, we can explain," he said, his voice calm, almost too calm. The arrogance in his tone made my blood boil. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what was going on now. You really think you can explain this? I spat, stepping into the room. What is this? Some sick game you've been playing with me? Olivia stood quickly, her hands shaking. Ethan, please, I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. This wasn't what it looks like. Really? I sneered. Then what exactly is it, Olivia? What exactly were you doing in there with him? What were you really doing behind my back? Jonathan stood up then, his smile cold. You don't get it, Ethan. This is bigger than you. It's bigger than your little life. You've been a pawn in all this. A pawn you didn't even know about. The words hit me harder than I expected, and for a moment, I froze. What was he talking about? My heart raced, panic clawing at my throat. This wasn't just about the affair anymore. It never had been. What the hell do you mean by that? I asked, my voice tight. Jonathan stepped closer, his presence suffocating. Olivia and I weren't just having an affair. We were laying the groundwork for a takeover. Your company, Ethan. The one you work for. I've been in on it for months, and you've been too busy being the good little employee, the loyal partner, to see it. But it's too late now. You're out of the picture. This whole thing was a plan, from the start. You were never meant to be in control. The room spun around me. My knees felt weak. The words hit like a freight train. They were all in on it. Olivia had known. She had been a part of this scheme the entire time. This wasn't just about power or money, it was about control. My entire life had been manipulated from the inside out. I stared at Olivia, feeling the sting of betrayal cut through me like a blade. You knew about this? Olivia's face crumbled. She looked away, unable to meet my gaze. Ethan, I was trying to protect you. I thought we could stop it before it went too far. But I couldn't. I couldn't pull away from him. I couldn't let go. Her voice broke, but I didn't care. Every word she spoke now felt like poison. And now you're telling me you thought you could stop it? After everything? I shouted. After everything we've been through? You let him do this to me. To us. Jonathan chuckled, crossing his arms. You've always been so naive, Ethan. You thought you were in control. But you've been a pawn. You were never going to be anything more than a figurehead. And now? Now I'll take what's mine. The weight of his words sank in. He wasn't just taking my company. He wasn't just taking my fiancé. He was taking my identity, my life, and everything I thought I was working toward. My hand went to my pocket, where my phone was still buzzing. It was a message from David, "Get out of this, Ethan. You don't know what you're dealing with." I couldn't trust David anymore. Not after what I'd just learned. The room felt smaller now, suffocating. The walls closed in. I needed to make a decision. A choice. Either I would walk away, leaving my whole life behind, or I would fight. But fighting would mean facing something darker than I'd ever imagined. The next moment felt like a slow-motion scene in a movie. Jonathan stepped forward, his eyes locked on mine with a cold determination. Olivia didn't speak. She just stood there, her body tense, as if she were waiting for something. But what? Suddenly, I realized what was happening. They thought I would just walk away. They thought I would let them win without a fight. But I wasn't going to let them. I had lost everything already. What did I have left to lose? I moved quickly, grabbing the stack of documents from the desk. I knew what I had to do next. Jonathan had underestimated me. They both had. I walked toward the door, the documents in hand. "You think you've won," I said, my voice icy. "But you're wrong. I'm not done yet." Before they could respond, I turned and walked out, my footsteps echoing through the silent house. I didn't know what would happen next, but I was done being the victim. It was time to make them pay. As I left, I heard Olivia's voice faintly calling after me, but I didn't turn around. This was just the beginning. I couldn't breathe. My hands were clammy, slick against the cool metal of the car door as I slammed it shut. The engine hummed beneath me, but everything felt distant, far away, as though I were no longer in control of my body. I was moving on autopilot, the weight of everything I had just uncovered sinking in, and all I could think about was the next move. David's warning echoed in my mind, "You don't know what you're dealing with." But what did that even mean? How could he have been involved in this and still act so calm, so composed? I was no longer asking questions, I was past the point of wondering. There was no turning back now. I parked my car at the edge of the street, in front of the building that had been my workplace for years. The place where I'd devoted myself, put in hours, accepted the raises that were offered with no questions asked. This was my life, my identity. And now, it was a lie. The office building loomed ahead, tall and imposing against the evening sky, its windows reflecting the dimming light like the eyes of a predator. I walked toward the entrance with purpose, but every step felt heavy. My mind flashed back to Olivia's tearful face, to Jonathan's cold, calculating smile. They thought they were smarter than me, that I would cave under the weight of their deception. But I wasn't the same man who had been blind to it all. Inside, the elevator ride felt too slow. I could hear the soft hum of machinery, the distant sound of footsteps from other employees on their way out. But in this moment, it was just me, alone, steeling myself for what I was about to do. What we were about to do. I was about to take everything back. Or lose it all in the process. I stepped off the elevator on the 15th floor. The hallway stretched ahead of me, silent except for the sound of my shoes on the polished tile. My pulse quickened with every step. I approached Jonathan's office, the door slightly ajar, and for a moment, I hesitated. What if he wasn't alone? What if he had backup? But I couldn't afford to wait. I pushed the door open. Jonathan was standing by his desk, phone pressed to his ear. He looked up as I entered, his eyes narrowing. "Ethan," he said smoothly, as if he'd been expecting me. "I figured you'd show up eventually." "You're late." I didn't respond. My fists clenched by my sides. Everything I had learned, everything I had uncovered, was rising to the surface now. This wasn't just about him or Olivia, it was about everything I had built. And Jonathan was trying to destroy it all. "I'm done with the games, Jonathan," I said, my voice cold. "You've crossed the line. And I'm not letting you get away with it." Jonathan raised an eyebrow, slowly putting the phone down. "What are you talking about? You've lost your mind. This isn't how this works." I could hear Olivia's voice in my head, pleading with me to listen, to understand. But there was nothing left to understand. She was a part of this. A willing participant. "Don't play dumb with me," I shot back. "I've seen the documents, the transactions. I know everything. You've been using Olivia to get to the company, to get to me." Jonathan's face hardened. For a moment, I saw a flicker of something in his eyes, a flash of fear, maybe, but it was gone before I could be sure. "You think you're the first person to dig into my business?" he said, his tone ice cold. "You think you have the power to stop me? You're just a small player in a much larger game. And you're already out of your depth." The words hit me like a slap, but I didn't flinch. He could try to intimidate me all he wanted, but I wasn't backing down. "If you think for 1 second that you're going to walk away with everything, you're wrong," I said, stepping closer to him. "I'll expose everything. The merger. The funds you've been siphoning. And I'll make sure the world knows how far you and Olivia went to destroy everything I worked for." Jonathan's lip curled into a sneer. "You're a fool, Ethan. The company's already in the bag. You'll be the last person to stop me. Your precious Olivia, she's already signed the papers. This is over." The floor felt like it was tilting beneath me, but I didn't let it show. I knew something had been off about Olivia. I knew she wasn't telling me everything, but this? She had signed the papers? It was a blow I wasn't prepared for. Before I could respond, the door swung open, and there she was, Olivia. Standing in the doorway, her face unreadable, her posture stiff, like she was walking into a battlefield. "Olivia," I said, my voice tight, but I couldn't keep the hurt from slipping through. "Is it true? Did you really sign the papers?" She looked at me, and for a long moment, she didn't speak. Her eyes flickered toward Jonathan, then back to me. There was a hesitation there, but it was too little, too late. "Ethan," she trailed off, shaking her head. "I didn't want this. I never wanted any of this. But Jonathan, he said it was the only way. We had to." "We had to what?" I demanded. "Betray me? Destroy everything we built together?" Jonathan stepped between us, his voice low and threatening. "You're wasting your time, Ethan. You think Olivia didn't see the bigger picture? She knew what was at stake, just like I did. You were never going to be part of it. Not in the way you thought." "Get out of my way, Jonathan," I said through gritted teeth. But he didn't move. He looked at me like I was beneath him. "You're not a player in this game. You never were. It's over." I felt a cold rage seep into my bones. "It's not over," I said, taking a step forward. "Not while I'm still standing." For the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt in Jonathan's eyes. "You've already lost," he said, his voice shaking ever so slightly. "You don't even know what you're dealing with." And that's when it hit me, the truth. The real game. "You're wrong, Jonathan," I said, my voice steady. "You're not the only one who's been playing." I reached into my pocket, pulling out the flash drive, the one I'd been holding onto since the first crack in their scheme had appeared. The documents. The emails. The wire transfers. "You think you've been in control? Think again." The room was suddenly silent, every breath hanging in the air as I held up the flash drive. The game was on. And this time, they didn't have the upper hand. The conference room was cold, too cold, as if the building itself knew what was coming. My hands were steady, though my mind was far from it. The flash drive sat on the table between me and Jonathan. He hadn't said much since I walked in. He knew, just like I did, that everything was about to change. The door opened behind me. Olivia stepped in, her face a mask of indecision. She didn't look at me. Didn't meet my eyes. She glanced at Jonathan, but when she turned back to me, I could see the cracks in her facade. The betrayal was written all over her face. She knew this moment had arrived, and there was no going back. "Olivia," I said, my voice sharp. "You really think this ends with me walking away? You think I'm just going to let you both destroy everything I've worked for?" Jonathan let out a dry laugh. "You still don't get it, do you? You've already lost, Ethan. This is bigger than you, bigger than your company. It's all in motion now. Nothing you do can stop it." I couldn't tell if he was lying or if he genuinely believed that. Either way, it didn't matter. What I had now, what was on that flash drive, would make sure they both paid for what they'd done. What happens now? Olivia's voice was barely a whisper, but it hit me like a slap. She looked so broken, so lost, but I wasn't fooled. I wasn't the one who had been betrayed in this scenario. I wasn't the one who had manipulated everything for months. I glanced down at the flash drive, feeling the weight of it. I knew exactly what to do with it. I knew how to turn their scheme back on them. "This ends now," I said, standing up. I walked toward the door, but stopped and turned back. "This is where you both lose. This is where your little game ends." Jonathan's gaze hardened, his jaw clenched. "You won't be able to prove anything. You think you can take me down with a flash drive and a few documents? You're nothing. You're weak." I almost felt sorry for him. He still didn't get it. But I wasn't weak. Not anymore. I held my phone up, pressing the button to send the documents to the authorities. The click of the send button was deafening in the quiet room, and I didn't look back as I walked out. I didn't need to. The next few hours were a blur. The police were already at the building, securing everything before the media even had a chance to catch wind of it. The authorities didn't waste time. The arrest was swift, clean. The files I had sent, the ones that connected Jonathan and Olivia to the financial crimes, the embezzlement, the corporate fraud, sealed their fate. They were done. I stood outside the building, watching the police cars pull away, Jonathan and Olivia in handcuffs. Their fate was sealed, but my heart still felt like it was being torn in two. The betrayal stung, but what hurt more was the realization of how much I had allowed myself to be deceived. How blind I had been to the signs. Olivia had been the love of my life, and Jonathan, he had been more than just her boss. They had both played me like a puppet. But no more. Sometimes, the only way out is through, I whispered to myself, recalling a lesson I had learned far too late. The truth had cost me everything, but it had also set me free. I turned around and walked away, leaving the wreckage of my former life behind. But as I did, I realized something that had taken me too long to understand. I had a future now. A future that didn't involve them. I had been a pawn, yes. But I was done being anyone's fool. This wasn't just the end of a chapter, it was the beginning of my redemption. The beginning of me taking control of my life again. Because in the end, it wasn't the betrayal that defined me, it was how I chose to rise above it. And that was a choice only I could make.